It always is this kind of stuff. Hey folks, how are you doing today? Yep, we're about 2.5 minutes behind schedule, and that is because we turned the system off and didn't know which switch it was to turn back on. So,
and by we mean me. That was me.
Yep, that's our pastor. Thank you. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this edition to Uniquely Lutheran. I'm Al Ernst, and along with me is the pastor of New Life Lutheran Church, Pastor Jeff Gross. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I think with our focusing issues, we will address everything up quick with issues that we've gotten feedback from the past couple of Sundays. First of all, the focusing issue was an autofocus issue with our actual camera picture in and of itself, and we were not able to turn the system off to turn that autofocus back on. So therefore, we apologize for not having the absolute words from the creed or the hymns for you that you could read. I know it was a bunch of blurry stuff. It looked like me taking an eye test at the DMV. So
fortunate for us, you already had those words committed to memory anyway.
Oh, yes, you did. Everybody remembers all that stuff. So welcome again. This is our final episode before we go into Holy Week. And as we do that, we want to make a quick couple of announcements. First of all, as we know, when we broadcast like this, we broadcast around the world. So hello, as I always say, to my friends in Abu Dhabi. I hope you are going to enjoy this. I believe it is early evening over there. So this is your post-dinner. We're in prime time over in Abu Dhabi. So how are you? Glad to have you. Our show is called Uniquely Lutheran. Our show will continue throughout our Lenten season. It was originally put together because of our COVID protocols, and we wanted to give everybody still a Lenten experience. But with the success of the show and how much fun we're having doing it, we don't think we're going to run out of topics, and we will continue this afterwards. Although next week's show will be a little bit different as we enter into Holy Week, which is kind of a little bit of a different celebration in the church, and we will make an announcement from there that our general Uniquely Lutheran show will begin during our Easter season, which will be that first week in April. A couple of quick housekeeping items. Number one, those of you that have Thrivent insurance, I know that I'm one of them, or Thrivent Financial, you have the ability to designate dollars, and our church, New Life Lutheran Sarasota, can be one of those and partially designated dollars. Your deadline for that is March the 31st. So if you get onto your Thrivent account, make sure that you put those designated dollars that way. In addition to that, let me say this real quick as well. Those of you that are Thriver members know that you have also two special options, and that is for church and community service related programming. You have the ability to get a $250 grant from Thrivent, and I think a lot of us let that just slip by, but that's $500 a year. You can do that for special events, and we have done that towards the cleanup and maintenance of our church facilities, and we will be having some other ones. I know I'm a member. My wife is a member.
I'm a member.
You're a member. Yep. So we have those monies available to us, and if you have ideas for projects, obviously that $250 can always be of use. So knowing that, we will also move into our special goal of reaching 100 YouTube subscribers. We are slowly moving up. As of today, we are at 54. Our producer Amy says 54 members, or 54 subscribers. Those of you that go, oh my goodness, that's got to be tough. It is not tough. If you are on YouTube, it's basically creating a YouTube account, which is very easily done. And then you hit us as your subscribe, and that helps us out. It gives us a unique URL for people to do it. And believe it or not, we also have over 200. We're at 221 Facebook subscribers.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. Thank you, all our Facebook friends. We do appreciate that. So, that being said, and also if you have flowers for the Blooming Cross for Easter Sunday, please let us know. You need to bring those in. I would assume this coming Sunday because it's Palm Sunday.
Palm Sunday.
So that we can get that all prepared. And with that, let me turn that over to Pastor Jeff, because we've got some special services coming up.
Yes, we do. What we're doing this year is we're going to do an Easter sunrise service at 7:30, and that's approximately the time the sun comes up. So it's going to be a little dark when you get here, but the sun will be shining by the time you leave, and we'll be welcoming the resurrection with a beautiful sunrise. And we hope you can come and be a part of that service. That's at 7:30. It's a smaller service. It's a little less formal, but it's just as meaningful, and it's going to be in our beautiful, beautiful garden that we have at New Life, and I'm looking forward to it because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's really going to be nice. Also, we have a 9 o'clock and 10:30, making room for more people by having signups for Easter, and on Good Friday, we have two services, 4 o'clock and 6:30. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.
4 and 6.
4 and 6. Okay.
It's always good when the pastor knows what time the service is.
Hey, it's just a digit. It's just a digit. But yeah, you're right. It is good to know. 4 and 6. We have signups too for that. But just be there, sure. Those signups really are for our folks who are members of our church, making room for those of you who aren't members of our church. If you show up on Easter, we got room for you. If you show up on Good Friday, we got room for you. And that's a wonderful thing, just like we did on Christmas. So we want our people to come and celebrate the resurrection. And also you spend some time contemplating what Jesus did for us on the cross on Good Friday. And celebration is really not a very good word for Good Friday, but it is an opportunity really to grow in your faith. So please do that.
Please do that. And also the reason, yes, I intentionally let my mask hang on my ear to remind once again, everyone, that I realize many of us, including myself and most of us coming around, are either in line for or have received our one and only or first of our 2 vaccination shots for COVID. But unfortunately, not everybody has. And in respect to that, we continue our COVID protocols. We really hope that the date now will be sooner rather than later as far as that goes. But yes, we will still ask you to continue to wear a mask, and I believe that'll even apply to the outdoor service, will it not?
Thank you. Yes, it will, because even though it'll be safer outside, I think it's a good idea for us to respect the social distancing and also to respect the mask wearing. And I always like to put a positive spin on it, because Al's masks are kind of boring today. I know he's got exciting ones, but mine, it's the Florida orange bird. See, instead of it being a burden to wear a mask, think of it as an opportunity to make a fashion statement. So I always seize that opportunity.
Well, I'm glad you do, and as you continue to see that we do sit social distantly, if that is a word, distancy, or however we want to say it, because we want to make sure, folks, look, we are as excited as you are about the fact fact that things are getting better. There is no doubt things are getting better, but until we have everybody kind of in that same place, we still have that opportunity to have something go astray. And of course, we don't want that to happen anywhere, at any place, but especially at our church. So that's the reason we do what we do. We just ask you to please respect that as we go along. And I promise you, the minute we can start putting all these chairs together and take these things off and really not have to use them as far as our worship service goes, promise you we are going to be doing that. So big events happening next week in an interesting kind of way, because I would say of all the church seasons, and for those of you that haven't participated in the church in general, the church has seasons. They have times that things happen. This part of our church season is more of a reflective type season into the actual resurrection of Christ on Easter Sunday, which then becomes its celebration. I always get not a kick, but I always think it's odd when somebody says Happy Good Friday, because actually in the life of the Christ story, Good Friday was not really a great day for him.
You know, it is a pair. Well, even Good Friday, instead of calling it Bad Friday.
Well, I was wondering, is there something that you learned in the seminary? Why do they call it Good Friday?
Matter of fact, the Old English word for God and the Old English word for good were basically the same word. So from an etymological point of view, Good Friday actually probably derives from God Friday as opposed to Good Friday. And it's not to say, but I will say this, as painful as it is for us to watch or to contemplate what Christ did for us on the cross, it's because of what he did for us on the cross that we're able to come here today and continue to celebrate the church, because at the end of the day, it wasn't pleasant, but it was good. It was good because it did bring atonement for all humanity, and that's a good thing. It's a painful thing, but it was a good thing at the end.
That is true. And also, although we're not having a service, and we'll talk more about this next week, I personally feel like the entire story, to understand where Jesus' prophecy and how this all began, really started on what we call Monday, Thursday. And that is the date of where our communion began, the traditions of forgiveness began, as well as the prayers, and also the fact that we are human. And again, don't want to get into next week that deeply, but just be aware of those things as we move on. So we were taking on the 10 Commandments as seen by Martin Luther in the Catechism throughout our shows all of this week. I think we have pretty well covered the ideas. And tell me if I'm right, Jeff, that we have talked about the idea that the commandments usually always come off as a bunch of rules of things that you're not supposed to be doing, not allowed to be doing. You're breaking them, you're screwing up. But what we have been able to do is look at that in somewhat of a polar opposite of saying, actually, it has some positive of what we should be doing and how we should be doing things. Is that?
Yeah. And we did combine a couple of commandments because the taking of property looks very much like coveting, and slandering is very much like murder. So when you harm somebody, we talk talked about don't harm people, do something kind for someone, help people keep what is theirs, and in other words, don't give into the temptation of envy. Be grateful for what you have. But today, I'm going to go to a very interesting topic here. I might need some help with Al on this one, and that's adultery. Thou shalt not commit it.
You know, that kind of sounds bad when you go, I need some help with Al on this one. Like, he if there's an expert on adultery, Al's your guy.
No. He's an adult. We're adults. And speaking of adults, this is an adult commandment. But I also think it's more than that. I'm just going to read to you what Luther wrote in his catechism regarding the sixth commandment. And some of you who are uniquely not Lutheran would number this the seventh commandment, and that's fine. It's okay to be wrong. No. That's just my little Lutheran spin here. We are to fear and love God, so that in matters of sex, our words and conduct are pure and honorable. In husband and wife, love and respect each other. Here's where I need some help from Al. Al is a professional comedian. There's some words that comedians can say that I, as a pastor, cannot say. Words you can probably get by saying in certain places. We've talked about this, that would send me packing on a Monday morning if I accidentally said it in church on a Sunday. And it was reminded, of course, all the great ideas seem to happen after I'm done talking to Al, not during the time I'm talking. But I was in confirmation class, and I had a pastor. I loved him very much. He's with the Lord now, but I loved him very much. And he let us ask any questions we wanted, including the really, really, really hard ones. And one of our classmates says, I know we're not to take God's name in vain, and we know what a swear word is and how God's name can be used as a swear word. But this $50 word of which I speak does not invoke God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit or hell or damnation or anything of that nature. So his big question to the pastor, is it a sin to say that word? And the pastor said, yes, it is. I think he was hoping the pastor would say, no, as a matter of fact, it's not, come to think of it. But he said, here's the reason why. Because the gift of sexuality is a gift from God that's meant to be respected and treated with respect. And that particular word really cheapens it and makes it vulgar and ugly. And it would be a violation of the sixth commandment to say that word. And of course, there are some of my classmates that were hoping the pastor would give them a free pass on that one. But alas, no, it is a sin to say certain words because of the nature of sexuality. But I don't know, is there anything you want to expand on that? Well, open that can of worms.
Actually, I have a couple of questions about it. And one of my questions is, of course, when we think of adultery, we obviously think of the physical
cheating on your spouse.
Cheating on your spouse, but also there's two areas I want to get into. So the first area is this. I'm an older guy, and I remember when we had a president that ran for president by the name of Jimmy Carter. So I'm going way back. Jimmy Carter agreed to a interview with, at the time, we used to have things called magazines. I know a lot of people wonder what happened to them. They were made out of paper, and one of the quote unquote adult magazines was called Playboy magazine, and everybody said, oh, I always read it for the articles, and we can make jokes about that all day long. However, they interviewed the interviews in that magazine made headlines. I mean, you had people that from all walks of life that did what they called the Playboy interview, and they interviewed Jimmy Carter who then at the time is and still is a Sunday school teacher, a regular visitor in Plains Baptist Church, everything like that. And he had this kind of innocent guy who wasn't going to be your typical womanizer or anything like that. And they asked him about adultery, and he said that he broke that commandment constantly because he lusted in his heart. Now, of course, the press took that and ran with it in a whole bunch of different directions. So my question to you is, all right, somebody sees somebody that's not their spouse and has that kind of thought in their mind. They obviously don't act on it. They still treat the person with respect. They do all of the outwardly things that we say. Where does that stand?
That's a good question. And I don't want to get into trouble here. I'll give you a good answer, Al. As much as we say that turning a negative commandment into a positive commandment in some ways makes it easier for us to follow the 10 Commandments, when we go back to the Sermon on the Mount, and we hear Jesus say, "You have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say unto you, if you so much as look at somebody in that manner, you are committing adultery." And you know what the Pharisees really wanted Jesus to say? Kind of like my colleague in confirmation class. He was kind of give me a free pass. I can look, but I can't touch type of a deal. And Jesus is like, you can sin in your hearts and you can sin with your thoughts. And so, yeah, obviously I've never murdered anybody, but I have hurt people, not on purpose, of course. And I violated that commandment in one form. So in many ways, Jesus made it harder, not easier, harder, because he took it away from, on the surface and he brought it to the heart. So President Carter, when he said that, is absolutely correct. And there are other sins besides adultery too. Adultery seems to be a favorite sin of a lot of people. Bearing false witness against thy neighbor, as I mentioned, that's a sin too. Lying about somebody, that's a sin too. Not telling the truth or deliberately harming somebody by spreading rumors, that's a sin too. And it's every bit as bad as adultery. And I think that's an important thing I just need to point out as well.
And which then brings me to a whole nother question, in that in our system of society, and you can separate it secular into spiritual. In our system of society, if I violate a law that is, would be considered a sin, I may get one type of punishment because of the amount of violation I had. However, somebody else who really violates the law gets a much stricter punishment or is much more accountable. So, but what I'm hearing is that God says sin is sin, regardless of whether it's the little minor thing or it's the great big thing, and he looks at it all the same. Is that true? Is that how does that work?
Well, there are the sins we commit against God, and there's sins that we commit against each other. And so we have this little thing called civil jurisprudence, and we have a legal system. And to be sure, if I stole a Tootsie Roll from Wawa, I'm not going to get into as much trouble as if I rob a bank. But I'm stealing, and I'm stealing. Stealing is stealing, and God can forgive me, but the judge might not, and that might be good. I think it's important to know the difference between forgiveness and clemency. That forgiveness is the act of saying, yes, I can forgive you for your sin, and God has forgiven you for your sin, but you're still accountable for your actions to what you did to society. So it's a matter of accountability, more than just the sin. Sin functions on lots and lots and different levels, but we'd be kind of kidding ourselves if we said that there aren't certain degrees of sin.
Okay.
It's an interesting, it's a great conversation. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Well, no, the reason I say that is because, my belief is that that's true. We can forgive in a lot of, and we've been talking about that quite a bit. However, the other side of that is just because someone forgives somebody, whether that is, in our world, each other, or in the big picture of God, like you said, you still face consequences to that sin.
Yes.
You still face accountability to that sin.
And some of the consequences might be jail time, and some of the consequences might be a night of not sleeping very well. If your conscience is affected by how you hurt someone, or be it accidentally or even intentionally, you're paying a certain price. I think of the parent who on occasion averts the occasional spanking because they see just how forlorn their kid is. They say, I don't need to throw salt on your open wound. I think you're sorry enough, and we'll just leave it at that. You can grow from that. If you have genuine remorse, if you have no remorse at all, spank away. Ooh, I'll get in trouble now for sure.
Right.
We'll get all kinds of calls. But remorse, I think, is something that is a consequence. Remorse is a consequence.
I just find that an interesting method because we do offer, when we are given the gift that God gives us in grace, we are forgiven. We're human. We are forgiven. However, there are still things that we will have to account for and try to, either, and again, when you do sin, sometimes, there is no quote unquote, I always think of, we're going to make it right. Well, we're not going to make it right, but what we are going to do is try to do things that help atone actions that, whether that's repayment back to something that you've done or whatever. But there is no, you can't turn back time. I mean, the only way that you can make up for a sin is to turn the time back and not sin at that point. And right, what I'm saying is there are consequences to those actions. And leaving our last thing, leaving with on the adultery premise, for those of you that are younger and you're going, well, that doesn't apply to me. I'm not married, or I'm a little kid, or whoever it is. I think what we're really talking about here, as much as anything, is respect. And that is to each other, to how we treat one another, and it doesn't have to be necessarily, even though the word is a sexuality word, it is about us treating those of us that are not like us, whether they're the opposite sex, they're another skin color, they're another nationality. It is about giving that ability to be kind and respectful to all people out there.
It's like celebrating our differences without exploiting them. And like I mentioned last night, I said we did a 10 Commandment section in a Sunday school class, and someone said, what are you going to do about the 6th commandment? Are you going to talk about adultery to little kids? And I said, no, but I'm going to talk about respect. Boys respect girls, girls respect boys. If you respect each other, you don't objectify, you don't exploit, and you don't hurt. Respect has a tendency of making that work.
Well, what I hope we've done for you in wrapping this up is that Jeff has explained, and I think very, very well, about how you can take a lot of the things that we all look at in the Bible as rules, maybe as negativity, and that there's the other side of it, of how we can advance with joy and how we can, and I don't usually use a lot of churchy, flowery words, but that we're able to live in an atmosphere, a vibe, as I like to call it, a positivity, and that our mind, our mind will allow that to happen if you consciously think about it. If you don't consciously think about respect and being that person, your mind will take you in other places, and the next thing you know, you're spouting out something you regret later. So with that, that kind of completes our 10 Commandment series. I think we're going to get really deep next week into how the idea of Holy Week happens. Maybe we'll give them some tips on preparation of really, because there's no better feeling in the world from an Easter, at least for me, from an Easter standpoint, of really feeling that pain that we all believe that Christ had to go through that time, to the joy of our Easter morning resurrection.
And thank you, Al. I can tell you, you don't skip Good Friday. At the very least, don't skip the cross, because the power of the resurrection is not going to be nearly as effective without it. And it gives us an opportunity to go on that journey. And sometimes it's less than fun. Sometimes it's a little sad, and that's okay, because we're humans. We mentioned we're seasonal people. There's seasons. It's not sunny 365 days of the year, and I'm not funny 365 days of the year. We all go through our seasons, and that's part of the journey.
And as we finish and say goodbye, Jeff talked very briefly about this coming Sunday is what's called Palm Sunday. What does that mean?
Palm Sunday is a little bit bittersweet. The sweet part is Jesus' procession. The bitter part is realizing that it's temporary. In Palm Sunday, we see Jesus triumphantly coming down from the Mount of Olives into the golden gates of Jerusalem, and we see all of the celebration. And we know a few days afterwards, there's going to be a different kind of crowd, and there's going to be a different kind of procession, and it's not going to be as exciting. And that's always kind of in the back of our minds. We always have that in the back of our minds. It's kind of like drinking Tab Cola. It may be sweet, but it's going to catch up with you.
No, there you go. Well, on behalf of Pastor Jeff Gross, I'm Al Ernst. We will be back with you again next Tuesday, and that is Tuesday doing Wednesday, being uniquely Lutheran. We want you to have a wonderful week this week. Hope you will comment. Again, we really need you to give us the subscriptions on YouTube, the likes on Facebook, and continue to see our action gospel at New Life Lutheran Church in action as we go. So have a good week, everybody, and take care. All right.